Welcome back, everybody. Over to you, David.
Millie, thanks so much. Next up, our panel, making the best use of DAM in education and managing it effectively. Those are words that we continue to learn the meaning from, and I've benefited so much from the expertise that's here on the panel, as well as those of you who are joining from around the world. And in our panel today, we have 4 professionals who create an interesting sphere of a story, of the geometry of a story about DAM. We're going to start with our friend and colleague and our return visitor, Kimberly Klotz from the University of Central Arkansas. Kimberly's in her 6th or 7th year of working with DAM. And we so appreciate, Kimberly, your coming back multiple times to share with us your journey, its unfolding, the lessons you're learning, and what's on the horizon. We've asked Jonathan and Michael, who are from leading vendors who work in the digital asset management field, who have the privilege, in my mind, of working with them all day, every day, which is one of those aspects in career choices for those of you thinking about DAM. That's a real privilege to work with DAM all day, every day in so many diverse settings. And finally, Kristen Vogt from NWEA is about to begin a DAM journey, but she's done a lot of things to get ready for that. And we have a pretty fun and very innovative presentation from her. Each panelist will introduce themselves. We've allowed plenty of time for Q&A. Yours truly is going to exercise the sophisticated technical role of advancing the slides, as it's just easier than passing the Zoom baton around. And Kimberly, let's get started. And I'll be here to move the slides forward as it's helpful to you.
Thank you, David. I am really honored to be here again with Henry Stewart and speaking to all of you. I am located at in Central Arkansas in the southern United States at the University of Central Arkansas, and I am the director of marketing here. I want to start by giving a brief update of where we started and what it was like when we first started our journey. And then I'll give some tips and tricks that we went through as we launched our DAM and we put it together on the back end, and also what it was going to look like public facing. And then talk a little bit more about where we're going from here and where our journey is right now. So the first part of this, I have this particular slide. David had mentioned at one point about how it's sort of nestled. Your DAM becomes nested in a lot of different things, and that's really what we did. And the little mouse, I wanted to start with a kind of a question like, what's the big cheese, right? Like, what's your goal? What's the big deal happening? And that's really what we started with, and where we began our journey. I'm sure that many of you know we like to decentralize and re-centralize a lot in higher education. So we were on our re-centralizing arc back in 2014, 2015, and then we decided to complicate that by completely redoing all of our logos and rebrand the university. But if we talk about where we were, what were we using that technology? What level were we at? We were at travel drives that you plug into your computer. we were at base 0. We were at just a lot of things connected together with bubblegum and tape, right? We didn't even have a centralized area that we put things in. We really were just every man for himself. It was the Wild West. I describe it a lot when I'm talking about it. So we knew we needed to do something. So we started this journey. I didn't know what was out there. And I'll get to later in the presentation, one of the things I'd like to pass on to others that really helped me kind of decide on pursuing this course of action. But what we started with was, what were our goals? We had to educate ourselves on what it meant to have a DAMS, what it would mean for the university, could we afford it? What was out there? Just a whole bunch of questions. But the big thing was, what are we trying to accomplish here? What is our measure of success? And also, how does it align with the university mission and vision, our strategic planning? How are we going to integrate this into things that were already happening on campus that were very important? And how could we show them that this was necessary and it was something that we could leverage effectively? So we'll talk about all of these questions here, along with how to involve others and play well together. And so on the next slide, talk a little bit about onboarding and making the case for funding. This was or can be a traumatic trial of a time. And so some of the things that we learned was that it was going to be tough. And I don't know that there's ever going to be a time where it's not tough. It's kind of like when people say, you know, like having a family or buying a house, like it's always going to be a process and tough. I mean, so just accepting that that wasn't a stumbling block, or that wasn't that was something that was going to stop us. Next was doing our homework. And for us, we spent probably a year trying to understand what we were needing. And so I hope to pass on that it doesn't take you guys that long. But doing that homework was a critical step. The other part was reaching out on campus and hearing straight from the people that were going to be our users. We wanted to hear what their pain points were, get them involved at every step of the way. We're not worried about buy-in if they've already bought in. So that was really important, and it really helped us successfully launch. The other part was, you know, I bet a lot of you have small teams like we do. We're 12 people for foundation, for you know, recruitment, for all the areas, and so we're stretched really thin, and we weren't going to be able to recruit more team members in order to get this. So what did that look like for us? We had to be realistic, but not pessimistic. Then understanding our roles, and that was really a whole part of onboarding and a whole part of the building it up. And then just really involved in asking questions. One of the things for us, specifically with ROI, that I want to make sure that we cover, is that we looked at what was our currency, what did the people in the positions of making the decisions need to know in order to understand how important this was. So for us, we were able to take some of the things that we were outsourcing currently to marketing companies. And so we were looking at real world dollars, and we were able to say, look, if we have this system, it's going to save us X amount of time, which translates into this many design hours, which translates into this many tens of thousands of dollars that we're going to be saving on things that my designers cannot do right now, right? So we really were able to put it to them in a way that really they were able to understand completely, and we actually ended up getting some positions in our department because we pulled so much money back in. So that time savings equaled dollar savings, and so that was part of also getting our pitch right, right? So that's really important that you do that when you're making your case for funding. So I like to always include at the start of a meeting, I do a lot of SWATs around campus. So we're, you know, to get more information, and I like to just start with this. I'm ignorant. I'm here to learn. And everyone's ignorant of something. And so I have amazing colleagues that I can involve, and it really makes what we're doing better. And I know that sounds like a little kumbaya, right? But truly, it really was the part of our journey that made it successful. We had an amazingly successful launch. It was received very well on campus. People know it is a brand that, you know, Bear Share is what we named our dams, and it's an in-user portal that everyone can get to. And we have our cheerleaders. We have people, even when they see something that that maybe they want changed, or we need to include, or we're missing out on, on, it's become part of a greater culture of talking about our creative materials and the processes behind that because we included them. And it wasn't just including people I knew were going to be nice to me. So there were a lot of people there that really helped us succeed. And I know I'm running a little bit late, David, so these are the last two slides, but I wanted to make sure that you guys saw some of the things that I really felt like came out of this that I learned. And one of those was to include more maintenance roles outside of Marcom. We had a lot of input. I was a little hesitant to give people roles. And so as we're expanding now, 6 years later, their contributions have become even more important as we talk about the cyclical process of planning and renewal, right? For those of you that are gardeners, we're consistently doing something to prepare our soil, to plant our seeds, to watch them grow to harvest. And that's the same as our dams. And it's never been more apparent after several seasons. And we can kind of see where we need to be tending a little bit better. The last two are just things that I push to my my team a lot, which is make sure self-care is there. We're always last in line, and so we have to make a point, especially in small teams where you're stretched thin anyway, to be in line, to get in line and stay in line. And then the last thing, tooting your kazoo. I actually give kazoos to my teams and keep them on their desk because I want to make sure that they know that even something that doesn't seem like on a billboard or a commercial, even that day-to-day task that you're doing is important. And so I'll just, tell them, toot your kazoo, like you can have a little party of one here, and I want to keep that morale up and that motivation going. So lastly, what do I hope to talk to you about in this next year? Getting the gang back together. Right, we had an amazing. I talk about how amazing it was to include all these people, and sort of the gang sort of kind of petered out a little bit. And so for us, it's really identifying the gang that can come back together, and we can kind of form a committee, a task force, if you will, to really identify and serve as an advisory committee for how we make sure that we're keeping our creative elements and our assets in the system in a way that makes sense, and we're continuing to grow and evolve. So that is our journeys thus far in a little bit of time. So I'll turn it back over to you, David. Thank you.
So that's what, 6 years in 13 minutes or something like that? Nice.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And at 2 o'clock, you have your kazoo at the ready, right? So, Jonathan, you'll be joining us next. And thanks so much for putting your thoughts together. It's a privileged role that you and Michael both have because you get to look across so many institutions. And I valued the chance to be talking with you over these last few weeks about some of the lessons learned and some of your many reflections on this.
Thank you, David. All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Jonathan. I'm with Canto Software, and I work primarily with existing customers and how they're going to expand using their digital asset management solution. DAM has changed quite a bit over the past 5 years. I think initially it was more about the introduction, and now this is something that's quite more well-known, really in part to organizations like Henry Stewart putting together opportunities like this. And so I'll start here by talking about what DAM can deliver in education. And I'll just talk a little high level at the types of use cases that we'll see across our higher ed partners. So when we think about how students might benefit from a digital asset management solution, we might be thinking about student employees. We might be thinking about collecting user-generated content across campus. There was a really cool story about the beginning of COVID when one of our customers was trying to put together a way to have a virtual graduation. And it was really helpful for them to be able to collect content from students as easy as possible to make sure that they had some beautiful slideshows and video content to put together in this new world that we were living in. When we're thinking about prospective students and alumni, I think we're really thinking about time to market for content and product for schools. Right, maybe that means how we're going to publish these assets to the different digital platforms that we're using nowadays. We're thinking about integrations. We're thinking about the ingestion of content. We're thinking about brand consistency and making sure that we can update content that might be living across multiple different endpoints in these ecosystems. As far as faculty and staff within university campuses, we're really talking about democratizing content across the university, which is just providing self-service, right? Schools, 100-year-old university is considered young, and these schools have so much content that they've developed over the years, and they're only continuing to grow that volume. We want to make sure that the best of best content is floating towards the top, and that there shouldn't be too many barriers for folks to be able to find and use that type of material. As far as community goes, we're really talking about getting brand assets and community resources into the world. So external sharing, maybe we're having some events on campus, and we want to make sure that the attendees of those events are really able to see or take a look at what we produced or the photography from that event, and just make sure that it's simple for the team to be able to share stuff outwardly. DAM across the EDU spectrum. So there are a couple of items here. We're thinking about colleges and universities. Maybe we look at the tier of K through 12 districts, education services, which can take multiple forms. As far as colleges and universities, we'll typically see the root of the DAM come from a communications type of team. Folks that are building content, putting together content, but that can also depend on the size of the school. We'll sometimes see needs vary on campuses. Sometimes the central communications team is the one that owns the DAM and implements this across the entire campus. Sometimes we'll see different business units, meaning different departments or teams on campus, like an athletics department, or maybe an admissions department, or an alumni team, really have needs that are unique to that specific department, and maybe they want to own their own library as well. So, you know, there can be this full enterprise-wide implementation for schools. And sometimes there are very specific needs across particular departments as well. For K through 12 schools and districts, I think this really comes down to how they're structured. Usually we'll see a district office supporting multiple schools, and we're thinking about this relationship of being a one-to-many type of relationship. And in this scenario, it's really important to streamline the feedback loop between the district office and between all of the schools that they support, meaning the collection of material across these different locations, or the distribution of material across that. And again, the consistency becomes really important here to make sure that everyone is on the same page and there is a level of control at that kind of main hub that is the district office. For education services, we're thinking about time to market again. These types of organizations are creating content very quickly and need to get it out into the world across different platforms. And that pace is something that can be enabled by creating a foundation where all of this content can live, by creating workflows and task management and integrations that are going to be able to support this type of productivity. And you'll see a couple of different quotes down there from schools and Mathnasium as well, which is more in that education services space. Okay, best laid DAM plans. So we can think about this maybe in the frame of how we might want to position DAM to the school. Kimberly did an incredible job laying out, her experience and how they've positioned and pitched DAM to their teams. And so here are a couple high-level points that we can talk about that I'll see customers going through as they begin their journey on exploring and sharing and ultimately pitching digital asset management to their teams. So the data audit is always kind of the first start. What do we have right now? Back to schools, just having so much content over the years and years of material. We want to first determine where we are at right now. What do we have in total? Not necessarily everything needs to go into the DAM, but we do want to take a first look at where are we at and where do we need to go. And we'll see some schools maybe start to break apart or determine what is most important to go into the DAM first by, maybe it's the past few years of content. Maybe they want to start with certain asset classes. It's always helpful to know exactly everything that you're managing right now, because that can inform what are our current needs and what are our future needs, which we'll talk about more in a moment. Defining the user groups. Again, there's across a university campus, there can be a lot of teams that are requesting access to content that maybe don't even know that some of this content is available, but can benefit them in their everyday lives. Maybe they're working with some one-off freelance photographers and they need to streamline that type of feedback loop. If we can determine who all of these groups are, we can grow the value in what the digital asset management solution is going to bring, and ultimately strengthen your case and make sure that we're leaving no stones unturned. The stakeholder feedback here is really important. Kim spoke about, making sure that they're already bought in and not being worried about the buy-in from there. Getting the feedback from each of these groups is really helpful, not just for your business case, but for the success of the actual adoption, right? I know that we want to make sure that we're doing or putting together this proposal in a way that's efficient as possible, but making sure that we incorporate this feedback is going to pay some pretty incredible dividends when we go back to the implementation and actually beginning to do the work. Current and future needs, back to just what do we maybe need in year one and where do we see ourselves in year three. Sometimes we may take more of a phased approach of certain departments, and then, in a couple of years, we want to see this thing grow across the entire campus. That can vary, but following the steps before, we're going to make sure that we can have a plan on how we're going to grow. Doubling down on implementation planning. I think for any schools that are beginning their research into DAM and are looking for funding for this type of project, it's of course nice to know what this thing is going to do for you, but we also want to present a plan on how we're going to get it done. So what resources are going to be provided by the vendor? What resources do we need to prepare on our end? What are going to be the dates and deliverables for implementation? Who all is it going to be involved? How much do we want all these teams and stakeholders to be involved? That'll provide as clear as a picture as possible to make sure that we provide a foolproof plan as we implement the solution.
Jonathan, I think if I could put these 5 boxes on like, what do you call it? A pennant or a banner behind an airplane, like one sees at the beach. I would put these 5 things on and keep flying them around, because they're so central to success, and particularly in some ways, culminating with implementation planning. This is not just add water to the dinosaur sponge and you've got Jurassic Park in your kitchen. There's so much that goes on, and it's so valuable to get a perspective like this that's grounded in seeing the supply chain, which you and Michael both, you get to see this in the Mathnasium and at the University of Pittsburgh, and it's so valuable to get these lessons from it. So thank you for that, much appreciated. And to continue, Michael, I'd like to turn this over to you, please.
Yeah, just like everyone else said, great to be here with everybody. Always wish that we could be in person. I don't know about my other fellow panelists, but I love playing off the crowd, and it's hard to not be able to see people and know how they're reacting to the things that we're saying. I've been around DAM about 15 years. I was thinking about it this morning, and when I got involved, it was much less sort of organizationally strategic. Back in the day, it just seemed to be like a central repository. We just need a place to put stuff, collaborate around it. We really weren't thinking about upstream, downstream. We weren't thinking about any streams. We weren't thinking about strategy. We weren't thinking about integrations. And little by little, it's just been great. Like you pointed out, Jonathan, like you came behind David, just talking about that entire digital supply chain. I think those of us who are now in DAM and we live in that world, we're very passionate about that. We see all kinds of opportunities to improve the entire content lifecycle or that digital supply chain. And just on a call earlier today with a customer talking about that. What are we looking at in terms of inputs and outputs? How can we optimize all of that space around the DAM system? So glad to be here and kind of talk about some things from my perspective that we talk through often with our customers. I'm from Wyden, an Acquia customer, or excuse me, Acquia company as of last September when we were acquired. I'm the director of customer success and have been with the company for about 4.5 years. When we think about this space for high ed, really, I think a lot about large enterprises. I think about the challenges that are in place in large universities and how similar they are to large corporations, where you kind of have this challenge of, I think Kimberly, you said it, like decentralization, centralization. It's a dance where it kind of goes back and forth. You get that same way in large enterprises where there may be some sort of core technologist that's looking at the entire MarTech stack. Oftentimes, though, you find that there's not that person bringing it all together. And so a department will have a need, a business unit will have a need, and they go out and they find a piece of technology and they think that now that I love it and it's meeting our need, we're going to propagate it throughout the rest of the organization. And they run up against some pretty significant challenges because there's not that overarching umbrella strategy that says to the other departments that this is the thing we're going to adopt. And guess what? They've also identified that they've had a similar need, and they've oftentimes gone out and they've found a completely different solution to do the same thing. And now, not only is the originator trying to stoke the fire of adoption throughout their business unit or their department, now they're trying to fight through all of those same conversations with all the other departments, with no one truly kind of leading the charge. Very, very tough. Also, from a budget perspective, it's challenging in high ed and similarly in large enterprises because there are so many initiatives underway and trying to figure out, without that centralization, how do we ensure success of our project in the organization and really taking advantage of the functionality that we are experiencing success from. And I'll also just be talking generally about adoption. And I'll just, as an aside, and I didn't note this on any of my slides, unfortunately, but probably one of the most beneficial certifications I have been a part of is ProSize Change Management certification, because at the heart of everything, change is about people. And I think in the slides that you'll see here, if David, you want to go ahead and click forward, you'll notice that people are at the center of so much of this. Kimberly talked a lot about people. Jonathan talked a lot about people. And so that's a theme you're going to be hearing from all of us. In terms of foundation, really it has to be said that strategy has to drive. If we don't have something that says, this is what our problem is that we're trying to solve and it's worth solving, and this is the way that we're going to solve it, then what is going to be our filter for prioritization? What's going to be our talking points when we go to sponsors and we go to our stakeholders? We need to have that problem or multiple problems identified and start working out from there with our solutions. Sponsorship's the next one. And this is really important from a change management perspective, which drives adoption. How can you get your leadership active, present, involved in your project to make sure that when you encounter barriers, which you will, we all have, that they are behind you saying, go team, we have to break through this. And sometimes they're the ones wielding the sledgehammer and saying, we have to do this, even though it's going to take time. How can you get that sponsor involved? And really thinking about who is the highest level sponsor that you can get involved. In organizations, like large enterprise and corporate America, we're looking for VPs, SVPs. We'll see if we can get all the way up to CMOs or CEOs. In high ed, who is that? Is it the head of a department? Is it the head of a different branch that's larger of the university? Is it a central IT figure? Who is at the highest level leader possible, so that when you run into problems cross-functionally, you can get that person involved? And then who's your project team? Making sure that you've got great representation from all of the areas where you're going to be rolling this out, and ensuring that they've got input all along the way, so that you can keep them together as a unified team, going out as sort of evangelists from your project, to make sure that that foundational message of this is our problem, this is how we're going to solve it, is constantly disseminated. As we get past that, on the next slide, thinking about specifically that strong project team, I really think it's critical to think about having a project or a program manager if there are a lot of sub-projects involved. It all depends on scope, but you can get away with just a project manager if it's going to be kind of a tight scope. But if you've got a cross-functional project that you're looking at different departments with different leaders, then I would really think about a more experienced project manager or a program manager that can ensure assignments of tasks and milestones and all of those things are being tracked out throughout. Your implementation partner, like us at Wyden, like Jonathan's crew at Canto, we can only go so far. We're not internal employees. And so having that person being the guardian of scope, being the guardian of your timelines, is really critical. Also thinking about the voice of, and you can see that I crossed out customer and put user. The user is your customer. And so we do have customers in DAM. It's every one of those people that are connecting to it, your admins, your power users, your general users, ensuring that they're on board. You've already heard that spoken, ensuring that you're understanding problems in the way that they would define them. So any of your value messaging is all designed to say, I know that you're having that challenge and this is what we're doing about it. Ensuring that all along the way, feedback loops, like you've heard also said, are always in place so that we can listen to the voice of our users. And you may even think about having someone on your project team that is specifically tapped to be the voice in the project team for your users. And they're just always going to be sort of that little, you're going to think of them like a mosquito, which I don't like them, by the way. And sometimes when you're trying to make progress in projects, you don't want that person going, oh yeah, but we're not actually meeting their need. We're kind of scratching our own itch here. That's not a user's need. You want them to constantly speak up and say, yeah, but how is that going to translate for our users? Really, really important for a successful adoption. And then DAM admins. I think that our audience today probably is saying yes, amen, and hallelujah to this. You definitely, like I said before, can trust that your implementation partner will take you a long way, but long-term success, you've got to have time carved out to do the maintenance in the DAM, to do the gardening, like Kimberly said. When she said that, I thought about the reality that weeds will always grow. We always have to prune. We always have to do the maintenance. And without having someone that is identified as the admin, or having even multiple admins with very clear responsibilities, then you're going to find yourself in a very weedy garden down the road, and it's going to take even more work and probably money to get you where you need to go. So we look at the next slide, thinking about ensuring long-term success, stay focused. But how do you do that without that initial strategy? You have to have that in place from the beginning. And so as you complete your project, you're always identifying what are the next steps? What are the next steps? Because it really is a garden. It really is something you have to nurture and maintain. And so work with folks like Jonathan, work with customer success managers, account managers, any of those people that you have at your disposal, to make sure that you're getting inspired as to what should I be shooting for here? How can I be thinking about how my system is setting in this larger ecosystem with downstream, upstream effects? How can I ensure that I'm putting strategic measures in place to ensure that we are actually hitting the mark as we move forward? And you could think about a framework like we use at Wyden called desired outcomes, or desired customer outcomes, where you are saying, this is what value is to me. You're identifying that from a pre-populated list that other customers are also saying this is value, so that you can work with your representative and say, I want to put a roadmap in place that will ensure I hit value just like that. And it's a bit of a different look at ROI. And then finally, governance and reinforcement. This is the gardening, isn't it? This is ensuring that we have policies and processes in place because of the lotto rule. I'm trying to stop saying like if someone gets hit by a bus, and instead saying when someone gets, when they hit the lottery, they're not going to stick around and manage dam for you. And so this way, we're sure that there are all of the documents needed so that we can continue forward successfully to ensure the health of the dam. They're not always the most fun or sexy things for us to focus our time on, but truly policies and processes do matter. And so again, I'm just going to end by saying, lean on your representative. Think about your vendor and how they can come around you and support you in these things. And by doing all this from beginning to end, aligning the strategy, aligning the people, aligning the processes and governance and all of that, you'll set the stage for long-term success. Thanks, David.
Michael, you bet, Michael. Thanks so much. It's so interesting because you and Jonathan, it's almost as if you were eavesdropping on the chat that's been going on and the questions that are coming in. It's been quite a little prescient and quite valuable. So in looking at these professionals our group here who's spending some time with us today, we started with Kimberly, who is a very seasoned dam manager. And Kimberly, if you could unmute yourself for just a moment, what's your job title? We had a question come in about job titles, kind of fun.
Sure. I'm technically the director of marketing is my title.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And Kristen, what's your job title?
My job title is manager of the professional learning design asset team.
Okay. And Michael, what are two different titles you've seen in higher ed and K through 12 about the DAM roles that come to mind?
Yeah, I would say instructional design, something in there has been part of that. Information technology has been a different part where there's more centralization. Information or course design, anything like that that's sort of LMS driven. We've seen a lot of those.
Okay. Jonathan, how about you? What are a little hodgepodge of, we were dealing out some cards here and they had job titles on. What are some that you're seeing or you have seen?
And that own the dam.
Yeah, just damn job titles. Yeah.
We'll see creative director, digital marketing manager, of course, your standard marketing manager. Sometimes it might just be that graphic designer that's wearing 100 hats and they really know what's going on with every team. So it can vary, but typically it is some sort of producer of content because they're closest to that supply chain of assets.
Yeah. So I hope to be leading a study on job titles and more importantly on compensation in the coming year so that we can all benefit from. So to round out our panel, Kristen Vogt from NWEA is going to talk about how she's used the DAM capability model to help them chart their journey. This was a mark of kind of luminous innovation. It was a real delight for me to hear about. And Kristen, I'm so glad you could be with us today, that you found this and to share your journey, and over to you.
Thanks, David. Yes, I will be telling you all about how I use the DAM capability model at my organization. NWEA is a nonprofit that facilitates thousands of professional learning workshops every year for teachers and offers online courses. And when I got there just over 2 years ago, I realized that it was very hard to find anything, and everyone relied on institutional memory to locate files. We were working in silos, and we had no integrations with our systems. We had no DAM platform and no org-wide digital asset management strategy. Next slide. So I decided I needed a systematic approach to the problem. And I knew that our asset management was not good, but I needed a shared language and a definition for this. And I'm a librarian by training. So of course, the first thing I did was some research, and I found the DAM capability model. And this gave me a framework for defining the problem. Capability models are in widespread use across many industries, and the dam capability model specifically is designed to help give the global dam community a tool to self-assess against common measures for how an organization is doing with dam. Next slide. So I looked at all of the categories that were available in the capability model. The main categories are organization, information, systems, and processes, and then each of these has several subcategories within it. And I decided to survey stakeholders at NWEA on 5 areas within the capability model. I wanted my survey to focus just on areas where my team and I could directly affect change in the organization through shifts in culture and awareness and appreciation of the value of dam. So I chose top areas where I saw potential for understanding and standardization having a large impact. Next slide. So this is a sample of a survey like the one that I sent originally to my stakeholders at my organization. And I've recreated it as a Google form so that I can share it outside of my organization. I basically put each capability level for each category into the survey, and the stakeholders chose the one that they thought best described our organization in its current form. And this example shows the levels of capability for strategic alignment, which falls under the organization category. Next slide. So the winner of the absolute lowest score was that strategic alignment category. As you can see, almost every category scored between a 1 and a 2, which are the initial and emerging levels of dam, with only 1 scoring as a solid 2. This is pretty underwhelming, but I was not surprised. It was pretty much what I expected from what I had seen at my organization. Next slide. So with my initial measures in, I decided that I should focus my efforts on that lowest scoring category, strategic alignment, because I had the biggest potential for improvement. I also thought that if I could improve that category, it would probably raise our capability in other areas. If you take a look at this category, that initial level is little to no understanding of dam operations are independent and uncoordinated. And the emerging level, remember we scored halfway between these two, is organizational units confer on dam at a level that allows ad hoc asset sharing, mostly through manual processes, which is basically just email me the link to the thing, which is how my organization had been existing for a long time. But when you look at optimizing, dam's value is understood at the highest meaningful executive level. Dam strategy is proactive, assets are reused, it's giving competitive advantage. So if we could work toward that, that would be a huge change. Next slide. So the next thing I did was to create another survey for my dam stakeholders to brainstorm what our barriers to higher capability were in that strategic alignment category. The group brainstormed 25 barriers to capability, and we divided that by 5, voted on the top 5. And these are the top 5 in order. I'm sure that they look familiar to some of you. No resources budgeted toward a cross-team solution, time, platform, or people. External control from other teams like IT, business systems, and procurement without control from affected teams. That's the cranky one. No dependable system or platform. Many silos preventing a larger strategy, and no efficient way to organize, sort, or access. So pretty sad. Those are our barriers. And they're pretty major barriers. So next slide. Our next step was to brainstorm solutions to those barriers. So for this one, we got 15 solutions, again, divided by 5 to vote on the top 3. And they are listed here in order. So number 1 was create cross-team governance for taxonomy, metadata, and naming conventions to make assets more findable across the org. Number 2, invest in an enterprise level dam platform, no surprise there. And number 3, create a cross-functional group of dam ambassadors who develop dam standards and processes while representing the needs of their teams. And the exciting part of this to me is that I did not write these, the group wrote them. And so in a way, I felt like I had already started to change the way people at my organization were thinking about DAM through conversations and sharing the capability model. Next slide. So the next steps in my process will be to implement those solutions. We're creating cross-team governance and standards, and we have just been approved finally to get a DAM system. Yay! And we have gathered our core team for implementation and created our project charter, and we have an executive sponsor. And in a few months, I will resurvey our stakeholders and remeasure DAM capability, and I am feeling optimistic that our level will improve. And I'll say lesson learned, buy-in at all levels is absolutely essential to success, executive to individual contributor. Everyone needs to understand and be heard. Next slide. And where are we going to be a year from now? By April 2023, we will have implemented our first enterprise DAM. And I hope to see a high adoption rate and possibly more teams signing on to use the DAM. We currently have 3 teams committed, but I would love to see full org-wide adoption. And I'm also planning to make sure that our fledgling group of DAM champions is well established by next year, and that we have high visibility and credibility in the organization, which I think will help not only with compliance, but with continuing to build a better culture around valuing digital asset management. That's it.
Well, you truly did find the chronometer. And if you haven't read Dava Sabo's book about solving the problem of longitude, highly recommend it. What a delight to see a synthesis of advice from Kimberly, from Michael, and from Jonathan about starting to grapple with change management and implementation planning in the before days, and to really get ready for this. So Kristen, thanks so much for that. And as you've had the chance to listen to your 3 fellow panelists, earlier we had talked and this exact question came in. What are a couple of things, what would you ask of your 3 colleagues who are here from around the country today about where you're at with this journey right now?
I would say that the beginning is all well and good, but I have questions about how to keep this up long term. I heard Kimberly refer to the group kind of, dissolving a little bit and needing to reform. And so I'd love some advice on maintaining that level of ability to have high enthusiasm, motivation, good maintenance, good compliance across attrition and time and things like that. And then kind of part 2 of that question, which someone actually already asked about job titles, is especially for Michael and Jonathan, who see a lot of different organizations, are there reporting structures that you see for DAM that are more successful than others in terms of that DAM success in an organization? Because we are very grassroots where I am right now. I am obviously not in marketing, and I'm kind of pulling this together, and so I'm very interested to know of that kind of reporting structure and what works.
Nice. Jonathan, you want to take a stab at that?
And by reporting structure, you mean across the assets in the solution, yeah?
Yeah, organizationally.
I mean, where is DAM situated? Like, who is it in IT? Does that work better? Does it work better when it's in marketing? Who are the main players, and where are they situated in the organization and in successful DAM, long-term DAM implementations?
Yeah, I mean, it will depend on the structure of your organization and then the scope of the project, right? So I think for larger teams, it is helpful to have some stakeholders that are going to be in charge of the DAM across multiple departments. So now we have kind of multi-threaded support across the organization. So, always Having some folks in IT that got a stake in this and, hopefully some budget in it as well is of course always valuable. Marketing folks are the ones that'll probably have this closest to their chest, like it's almost their baby because they're really affected by it. And then we'll also see teams like sales that, are really going to be the engine that's going to make sure that they're getting your work out into the market. So yeah, I mean, and then across these three types of teams, having the visibility into, what's in demand, what's being used, what's maybe not being used that we put a lot of time and effort into, that, maybe we want to go back to the drawing board and where we're investing our time and our resources are some different items that we'll see a lot of our customers looking for.
Nice. Michael?
Yeah, so with the acquisition of Widen by Acquia, what's really interesting is that we're part of an organization now that has CMS and other really extensive tools that help manage websites and enterprise level websites and customer data platforms. And so it really contextualizes DAM. And in that sense, it's all about use case. And so how are you using DAM in the broader marketing technology ecosystem? Who then leads all of that strategic charge? I like to see it under that department with arms out across the other related departments.
Kimberly, you've seen the evolution as you commented on and kind of hope, keeping new tentacles growing on the octopus, but the brain keeping track of all of them. What a couple thoughts that you would share with Kristen if we had you up in Boulder and you were meeting with that whole team who did the capability model?
So I think going back to my first slide when we were talking about it being nestled, I think if you look at it as something that's going to continue to be nestled within other containers, for me, we took the opportunity to use DAM as the bedrock of a culture shift in how we approached marketing and communication throughout the university. And honestly, I spend probably 70% of my time or most of the time of the year either doing trainings for people on not just DAM, but all kinds of communications-based things as part of what I call my dog and pony show. I have a cycle where I go, you talked about attrition and all of these things that are happening all the time. So there's always something to share with someone. And so those are the things that I would encourage to help feel more secure, that the DAMs is not just out there hanging out like it's, an appendix. It's like really important.
Gee, thanks for that, Kimberly. Maybe next year we'll work on the appendix session or something like that. So we had an interesting question come in about rights and content. And I wondered, Kimberly, since you just answered that, could you speak for just a moment about rights adjudication, rights management? Again, going back to that in my opening remarks about the axiomatic formula we live with is binary plus metadata plus rights. That's it. So a couple of reflections on things that have happened with rights or on adjudication.
So we spend a lot of time in my office making sure that we're following the proper usage as well as others, and creating that as part of how you intake assets and also how you decide on the gatekeeping. I think you can go too tightly, or really loose, but knowing depending on the asset type, what type of rights management that you need to control is very helpful during the planning stages.
And Michael, have you got a couple of reflections on the rights, the cluster of issue around rights? It's ever present. It's present acutely in some certain ways in academia, especially in K through 12, as Jonathan mentioned earlier. A couple of reflections that you might have on that.
Yeah, I think what's important is back to like governance, policies, process, all of those things. Document as well as you can all of the different ways that your organization is managing rights. What are all of the gotchas that you have out there? Because oftentimes the reality is that it just hasn't been mapped out. And then you end up experiencing one of those pitfalls or those gotchas. and it turns into a really bad scene. But once you have that documentation, you can sit down with whoever it is, your CSM or your account manager, account executive, whoever it is from the vendor that you're working with, and work through how does your functionality meet this. But having that map is really going to be critical, because then you can use the features and functionality to ensure that you get the right notifications and the security is set up the right way. Without the map, how are you going to remember all of those things though?
And Jonathan, I thought it was a very salient point on your slides where you said there are some exceptional sensitivities that arise in this broadly defined community. Further comments on that and about rights in general and some of the observations that you've made that complement what we've heard?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo Michael's sentiment on just making sure that everything is documented, right? There are so many different types of material and managing the different rights to all of that content can vary. So we'll want to make sure that, you know, although that we are trying to provide self-service, that this is all offered in a way that's really organized and managed. And you know, I think it almost feels like folks are buying insurance sometimes when they're looking for a dam, because we've heard some horror stories about, hey, you know what, this piece of content, or, you know, we got into this, you know, commercial that wasn't supposed to be published. And then now they're looking at spending money in a dam, which might be a fraction of the cost of whatever they're actually going through because of that issue. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I suspect both of you would join me in saying this may seem like one of the oddest things to hear today, but if you're doing your planning work and you can meet with the Office of General Counsel or whatever it's called at your institution, and sometimes these are very difficult meetings to ask for because it seems so out of sync with, well, wait a minute, what are you going to be putting in this thing anyways? But a more enlightened approach is to understand that the Office of General Counsel, their whole job is to figure out what's the balance of risk. And if there have been any acute unhappinesses that have occurred, whether it's something as inadvertent and an act of omission of, oh, we used an image that we didn't have the rights to, or we had contracted with this photographer and we didn't remember that we only had a year to use the image or something like that, or things that are more severe and more sensitive. It's just a great reflection of wanting to take the grounding for this to a strategic level, to an alignment level, and back to Kimberly's very first opening point about how to align this with the goals of the university and the upper management of any institution, and thinking like a large corporation, as Michael started his presentation with, it's risk balancing. It's where the governance comes in and some of the mundane things, but asking these questions about rights violations or risk mitigation can be quite embracing for securing that the great support that all four of you have solicited, either your counseling soliciting that, or in Kimberly and Christian's place perspectives, you've solicited that internally at your organizations. So with that note that we always want to see those scales of risk balancing well, I'd like to thank each of the four of you for working with me over these past 2 weeks and getting the panel ready, for your contributions to the field of digital asset management. We need this sharing. Our community grows and gets healthier for it. We had a lot of great questions that you've answered that have come in, and there's a couple of things in the chat menu too, which went on happily without us. So on behalf of Henry Stewart, thank you for each of your presentations, and I hope to see each of you soon, somehow in person. So see you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
So this does conclude the formal part of our day today, and we thank you for attending DAM for Education. It's part of Industry Week, and just a reminder that the session recordings from today's event are now accessible in the Agenda tab. You guys can go off camera now if you'd like to. We invite you to catch up virtually with old friends, make some new ones, grab a drink and raise a glass in the Lounge tab. And we'd also like to express our appreciation to the sponsors. And remember, by registering for DAM Industry Week, you have access to all the sessions across the week. And as some of you know, what I like to do is always end the day with saying, "Dear Asset Manager." Every DAM uses collaboration and talent independently for onward, now, and in the future. And if we take all those first letters, they spell education. So it's great to spend a day thinking about bringing all of your talents to a more known place and putting this marvelous, interesting, kinetic, kind of unruly application called digital asset management to work throughout the educational community. On behalf of Henry Stewart, thank you for your participation today. Hope to see you soon.